All right, today we're diving into a really staggering case of financial deception. We're talking about a CEO who built a massive empire on nothing but lies, funding an absolutely lavish lifestyle with other people's life savings. So let's pull back the curtain on this $380 million charade. First things first, let's just talk about the scale here. $380 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. This wasn't some small-time scam. This was one of the largest Ponzi schemes in Georgia's history. And behind that giant number are the real people, the victims. Over 2,000 investors. 2,000 people had their trust just completely shattered. We're talking about folks who put their retirement accounts, their personal savings, their hopes for the future, into what they were told was a sure thing. So, where did all that money go? Well, for starters, $2 million of it went to a single purchase, a yacht. And believe me, that was just the very, very beginning of a mind-boggling spending spree. This quote from the U.S. attorney really just says it all. It captures the sheer audacity of this crime. Burkhalter knew the feds were looking into him, but he just kept going. And that really raises the central question for this whole explainer. How on earth did he pull this off for so long? To really get to the bottom of how this happened, we've got to start with who made it happen. So let's meet the man at the very center of this web of lies, Todd Burkhalter, the founder and CEO of a company called Drive Planning. And Burkhalter wasn't just, a part of this. He was the architect. He masterminded the entire operation, building his company on a foundation of pure fiction and just exploiting the trust of thousands of people. The FBI statement here connects the dots perfectly. On one side, you have a massive scheme built on nothing but lies. And on the other, you have the extravagant lifestyle that it was all designed to pay for. So how did the scheme actually work? Let's break down the nuts and bolts of his deception and see how Burkhalter convinced so many people to part with their hard-earned money. Okay, so he used two main investment funds. On the left, you see the promise he made to people. The Real Fund guaranteed a 10% quarterly return from real estate loans. The Core Fund promised the super steady income from buying up property tax debts. But the reality, over on the right, was a complete fantasy. The property collateral? Fake. The relationships with developers? Fictional. And that Core Fund? Yeah, they just stopped investing any new money into it at all. And what he was doing, well, it has a name. This is the textbook definition of a Ponzi scheme. It's not about making real profits from smart investments. It's just a shell game, right? You use the money from new investors to pay off the early ones, which creates this illusion of success just long enough to keep the whole thing from collapsing. And here is his playbook, broken down into 4 devastatingly simple steps. Step 1, promise these guaranteed high returns that honestly sound way too good to be true. Step 2, create a mountain of fake paperwork, fake collateral, forged documents to make it all look legit. Step 3, rob Peter to pay Paul. Use money from new investors to pay fake returns to the early ones. And finally, step 4, use the rest to live like an absolute king. What makes this particularly awful is who he targeted. He wasn't just going after super wealthy investors. No, he went after everyday people. He told them to use their retirement accounts, their savings, and even to take out lines of credit. He was targeting people who really, truly could not afford to lose their nest eggs. Now, let's talk about the collapse. Most con artists would probably lay low when they feel the heat coming, right? But Burkhalter's boldness, his audacity in the face of a federal investigation, is what makes this story truly unbelievable. This timeline is just remarkable. So in March, the SEC starts investigating. You'd think that's the moment you stop, right? Wrong. 2 months later, in May, he's spending $400,000 on sports marketing. He kept pulling in millions from new victims for 5 full months, while knowing he was under federal investigation, until the SEC finally got an order to shut the entire operation down in August. Let's just focus on that marketing spend for a second. While federal agents were digging into his finances, he paid to have his company's logo plastered behind home plate at a Major League Baseball game. He even posted about it on Instagram. It's just a stunning, shameless display of confidence. But in the end, a scheme like this just can't last forever. So now, let's get to the final reckoning, the legal consequences for Todd Burkhalter, and a much clearer picture of where all that stolen money actually went. So this is what nearly $400 million in stolen funds gets you. A $2.1 million condo in Cabo San Lucas, that $2 million yacht we talked about earlier, $800,000 in luxury cars, over 300 grand just on clothing, jewelry, and beauty, and millions more on private jets and luxury travel. See, this was never about investing. It was always about funding a personal fantasy. And here are the consequences. Burkhalter pleaded guilty to wire fraud. As part of that plea agreement, the government has recommended a sentence of 17.5 years in federal prison. Justice is finally on the way. And that brings us to a final thought. That word guaranteed was used over and over again to lure these victims in. So it really makes you think, when you're looking at a new investment, what's the biggest red flag for you? What's that one thing that makes you pause and think twice? It's definitely a question worth asking ourselves.